Introduction. A vision of the thing that rises now in the face of the impossible to change the world through faith. Chapter 1. Walk Away. Walk away, boy. I ran a little booth for a while. I went around and asked the yard sales to give me what they didn't sell, and some did. And then I sold it at the swap meet, and I made a few dollars. Next to my junk booth was another junk booth, and the man who ran the booth was named Rod. Now and then Rod would come and buy some of my junk to add to his junk. He was my biggest customer, and I was surprised that he bought my junk since he had so much junk of his own. About a fifth of an acre's worth, strewn out on plywood sheets atop little metal sawhorses, and more stuff underneath, and laid out on tarps. It was quite a collection. People came and wandered up and down the aisles of junk, and now and then they'd want something. When we offered them a price, more often than not, they'd try to get it for less. After all, we were dealing in junk, people's leftover excesses, and the expectation was that we would let it go for nearly nothing. And in this we rarely disappointed our clientele. One day, Rod asked me to help him move some things. "I'll pay you $20, he said, and I couldn't pass that up. So we went to a long Quonset hut that was full of junk. I was amazed. The building was full of the types of things that Rod sold at the swap meet, and interspersed were little piles of rotting food, old papers, nudie magazines, etc. "The lady that owns this place says that I have to get out," he said. The next stop was a motorhome, packed full of junk, and then a large storage unit, packed from side to side and high up to the ceiling, and then an outbuilding in someone's yard. "Do you pay rent on all of these?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "That's why I'm so broke." "How many do you have?" I asked. 10 or 12, he said. Wow. I didn't say it out loud, but wow. As we were lifting a weight set into my van, Rod complained. "This is hard work," he said. "I'm getting too old for this." "Have you thought of doing something else?" I asked. "Yeah, but I don't know what else I'd do," he said. After a while, I started to wonder what the value of his stash might be. I started adding it up in my mind, just a few things that passed through my hands, and I quickly realized that even at garage sale prices, Rod might be a millionaire. But the flow was all dammed up, too much in and not enough out, and he seemed to lack the ability to put any real value on things. "It's all junk," he said, and it seemed like that was how he felt about himself. His face was dirty, his hair unwashed, his fingernails long, and he wore the same clothes every day. But there was no time to take care of what he had. All the same, he was a busy man, stashing, hoarding, and moving it around from place to place. He sold an item here or there, and nearly every day he bought more stuff. People stopped by his booth before going to the dump. They knew that Rod could not resist. He'd buy another pickup load full of junk with his last few dollars and go to bed worried about how he'd make ends meet. And I had this strange but familiar feeling that I had been sent exactly to that place to witness Rod. But why? I kept asking. After a week or so, I retired. I couldn't take it anymore, and I made my way to our desert camp and sat behind the steering wheel of the van and thought about Rod. I wondered what it would take for him to turn the tide of his affairs. I realized that even if he stopped buying junk and devoted the rest of his life to the dispensing of his surplus property, he would probably die before he finished, and the canker of the dark and rotting places might just kill him in the process. The only solution that I could see was to walk away from it all. And then I thought about myself. What am I still holding on to, I wondered. And I wrote this poem in the spirit of that question and the desire to be free from the scarcity that binds us to useless things. Walk away, boy, walk away. You'll never have enough, and you'll never find the thing that you were missing. Walk away. You know that she's a fake and that she lures you with a dream. Walk away. And let them come and carry it all into the hollow of their empty eyes, where the darkness needn't bind you any longer. Fly away, boy, into the brightness of the morning sunshine, and let the coolness of its rivers wash away the mystery of all you hoped to find there. It is easier than you think, and it is a breath away. It is a moment. It is now. A week or two after writing this poem, a friend helped me close my junk booth. We loaded it all up into my van, and into his truck, and dropped it off at the Homeless Relief Center. After they served the evening meal, they let the homeless people take what they wanted. The volunteer said that most of it was gone in about 15 minutes. One lady took the lion's share, he said, but he shook his head and chuckled. I don't know what she'll do with all of that junk. She lives in a tent. Sweet Ruin. I am grateful for the thing I cannot see, for the good that lies just beyond the ruin at my feet. Sweet ruin. Lovely splendor of the plenty hidden deep beneath the disguise of unwanted things. Remember to be grateful. Remember to rejoice when ugliness you meet. For it's he and his abundance that hides and waits with pockets deep, and gifts aplenty for the one who can't be fooled by the rough appearance of higher things. When it seemed too hard. When it seems too hard, stop. A little key of knowledge that was whispered to my heart on a day when I was suffering anxiety over a pile of bills and receipts. When it seems too hard, stop. And it is me alone that I am trying to convince. And it may be that you will not. On and on you'll fly, perhaps, into the bright flash of brilliant light that awaits the faithful. But I am not faithful, that is, to the God of my own ambition. I am a fickle follower, a traitor, and I both hate and admire myself for it, and it dies a slow death within my bosom. In the meantime, I chant the mantra in the hopes that it will take. Pied Pipers. Mourning the folly of friends and their bad choices, I'm sure that some have mourned over me as well, when I have danced to the song of Pied Pipers instead of listening to the still small voice that points the way to better things. Why will you follow fools? They play and you dance, and in the end you both fall down, and then you complain. I love that thing most that comes just before they speak. Silence. Why not skip the rhetoric? Why not settle for silence? She does not impose, she does not imply. She does not call upon dead others to justify her lies. But do not be deceived. if you will sit with her long enough, she will speak, with words too terrible to utter. And then you will either live or die by what comes next. For no one, having heard her voice, can justify their trust in anything less. A word to the polished. Be careful. Do not be deceived into believing that because the thing you speak sounds right, that you are right. It very well may be that you are not, for God looks upon the heart, and truth is independent. It needs no proof. And the world doesn't need your arguments. It needs the thing that you would be if you were not like the world. The price of the ordinary. There are two worlds, but to the untrained eye, the inhabitants of each walk side by side. The first world is the ordinary world. Its constituents conform to societal norms. They walk in time to the beat of the loudest drum, and they are motivated by the desire for personal profit. Like I said, it's the ordinary world. Ordinary people wanting ordinary things and doing what they have to do to get those things. And then there is the other world. For now, the other world is relegated to the outskirts because they do not conform to societal norms. They bend themselves to the will of a still small voice that whispers out of the heavenly realm. They are motivated not by personal profit, but by the desire for otherworldly gains. But soon the balance will tip the other way, when the cost of ordinary becomes too high, and the returns too low. Ruin, in short. Ruin will tip the scales. But some will hold on to the ordinary world until the end. They will cling to the rails even as the ship goes down. I shrink to think of it. Rush, rush. At the time that I wrote Rush, Rush, I was packing apples, peaches, tomatoes, and greens. I worked for a fruit farmer who dabbled in vegetables. Long days and little pay, but I enjoyed it. It was a family farm, good people, honest work, and they let me park my little travel trailer next to the house that they maintained for the migrant workers that they imported from Central America. The migrant workers came to the United States on a special short-term visa, and when the farmer was done with them, they would be shipped back to Central America. They had it worse, I thought, being so far from home. But then I laughed as I looked around myself. I was not so different from them. I too was away from home, though I lived an hour away. I could not afford the commute, and so I had to bring my travel trailer. And I lay there alone in the dark because the lights didn't work. And I listened to the music and the chatter that drifted over the rock wall from the house. At least I could go home on the weekends, I thought. Yes, we were the same, the migrant workers and I, each of us working hard for our little paycheck and sending it home to the ones we loved, and each of us endlessly chasing the dream of a little security that never came. The likelihood was that in a year from now we'd be doing the same thing or something similar, and 2 years from now, and 10, until we couldn't do it anymore. And I wondered how many of the masses of men had lived their lives that way. And as I contemplated these things, I was struck by the futility of it all, and I wrote this poem. And as I wrote it, an image came to my mind of a sea captain bellowing at a bunch of peasants as they dragged a boat along a waterway by ropes. Later, when I was looking for an image to attach to the poem, I found a painting by Ilya Repin called Barge Haulers on the Volga. It turns out that that was actually a thing. Russian peasants were hired to pull boats upstream on the Volga River. Who would have known? If you were looking at the book like me right now, you'd see a picture of that painting. Barge Haulers on the Volga by Ilya Repin. It was painted in 1873. Rush, rush, said the captain, the son of a captain, whose father was captain before. We drive for the nethermost edge of the world, where we'll meet the great captains of yore. We are told that they wait us, where ne'er a hiatus is known on that distant black shore. But the devil will greet us, and slyly entreat us with the lie, just a little bit more. Time. Time. There is enough of it if you believe it so. Sufficient is the day, remember? Watch out, the world clamors. There are 1,000 tomorrows to be looked out for. But really there are not. There is just today, just now in fact. But if you don't scheme and plan and fret and frown, you'll surely die. How they drone on. There is only one way to deal with bullies. If death it is, then death it must be. After all, what alternative is there? To hurry is a kind of death. To die to the only thing we really are, whatever that is. And whatever it is, it's now. And if perceived at all, it can only be perceived in the space just between nothing and all that we are not. Can you find it? Just here, just now. And let the world fly away to the castles they build between the dark brown earthy now and all the light blue empty dreams of tomorrows that will never come. As for myself, let me die to all that is not now. Bury me deep in the soil of today, and remember when I'm gone that there is time and plenty of it, if you only believe it to be so. Refusing to unbe. From my childhood, it hasn't changed. The clouds still roll on in the heavens, and wind shakes the branches of the trees that line the highway, and the warming spring with its stubborn, willful, obstinate insistence refuses to unbe, or even to bend to these lower fables that propel the hosts of men toward the abyss. When was it that we became so adult as to believe that there is anything so important as these? When did we lose track of that childlike faith that lies upon its back of a summer day and wastes it away in musing? I don't know, but I think we lost a thing worth losing. And call it folly, I'm going back to the days when I believed that someone, somewhere, was looking out for me. Will you come? Will you leave the thing you think you want but can never really have, for the peace that sees the April breeze and the clouds that float o'erhead? I'm leaving, and if you contemplate it for a while, you'll agree that the time for departure has come. We'll leave, and we won't come back, except in the reflections of sunlit leaves. It's there we'll meet the lost ones here below, by refusing to unbe. We'll warm them with the love that remembers when they could also see, and one by one we'll gather them to the thing they lost, until all who will refuse to leave, and then we'll shut the door behind us. Only the beginning. The time is soon coming, if it hasn't already come, when you will be torn from all your comforts, from all that is familiar, and exiled into a strange land. It is inevitable, and all those who will not suffer themselves to be thus exiled will die the death of proving beyond doubt that the thing they always feared they were is who they truly are. But remember that it is for this time, for this reason, that you were born into the world. For our inheritance is not unto comfort, but adventure. And the greatest and last adventure of them all lies not in things you can achieve, but is found behind the fearful curtain of things you cannot see. It is only there that you can know your weakness, and it is only in weakness that you can be made strong. And only when you thus discover that you are nothing, that you are small, can you find out that one is more. So don't complain when they bind you hand and foot and carry you where you would not, for exile is only the beginning. Not wrong. It's not wrong to leave your house. It is not virtuous to cower. A change in economics. When I was young, my father studied conspiracies. People called them, excuse me. When I was young, my father studied conspiracies. People called them theories back then. And Dad spoon-fed me on tales of doom and destruction. I still don't know how many of them were true. Some for sure, for many of the things that he predicted are playing out before my eyes. But I don't know that all of that talk about the end of the world was good for me. It held out the end as if it were a cliff that fell away into nothing. But there is never nothing. Since that time, I have watched others do the same thing. They watch the news, they study the red moons, and they talk while the day lasts about the time when it will all collapse. And I suppose there's a place for that, but not in my heart. I am not so interested in ends as in beginnings. And the end of one thing is just the beginning of another. Personally, I look forward to the new economy that will emerge when this one falls away. There is nothing to fear but fear itself. And I have begun to see great promise in the world that will remain when all of our worldly investments fall away. It's just a change, that's all. And the end of one thing is the beginning of another. And this time something better is coming, if you have eyes to see, a new world. But for this great and last change to be absolute, we had to grow fat on lesser things. And finally it's ready, so that when it falls, it will be complete. And that is perfect. For the thing that awaits is the very thing we all were longing for, with all of our devices. And early in the morning, on the day after it all comes down, on a street corner perhaps, before the sun is fully up, someone will be selling something. Eggs perhaps. And somewhere else, someone will be giving something away, or trading for the thing he needs. And the world will go on living, breathing, interacting. For economy is an eternal part of existence. It goes on to spite the fall of nations, to spite the end of worlds. But this time the winds of fortune have changed. Already they blow in the direction of those who work in the service of something more than the pursuit of personal profit. So don't lose heart when the towers fall. It's only the beginning of something better than all that we thought we served when first we set our hands to the plow and decided that we were man enough to look out for number one. You won't find it here. You won't find it here, he heard the Spirit say, and he looked up from his device to see the altar call. But nobody prayed, except a few, and it was a strained prayer between the teeth, mingled with the desire for praise. And the seats were empty except for a few, a yearner here, a tempter there, and a little band of those who wanted to prove that they were right. It has forsaken this place, he thought, and he raised himself to leave. And as he left, he heard the preacher say that we are the only ones. And the people all said, Amen. On the outside. Increasingly, people find themselves on the outside. Outside of politics, outside of religion, outside of institutions in general. And this is because institutions at their worst demand complete allegiance, complete fidelity. It is like a marriage, but it is not a marriage. Marriage unites two different but complementary things. The man one thing, and the woman something else altogether. And united they are one, separate they are bereft. But the institutions, the party, the sect, is not looking for the thing that it is missing. It's looking to duplicate itself, to multiply its narrow intent. There are many who would embrace certain institutions if only those institutions would not insist that their particular views must reign. But it is a doctrine of we are right because it's us. And where else can you stand but on the outside when such insanity reigns? Don't rise. Considering the inherent corruption of the mammon motive. It's not worth it, but all the same they rise to fight. They rise and rise and rise again, day after day, fearing the time when they must fall helpless, as do all eventually, into decay. And with every rise they sacrifice a little more to the machine, at first begrudgingly, and then with steam, until finally they chant in time to the grinding of its wheels, and march along in silent disregard of the ones it crushes beneath the mass of its enormous frame. And you would think that it was all there was of the world, for how they rise and rise. But it's not worth it. Stay down. If you can't rise to something more than that, stay down and die if you must. But do not live to serve the grind that drives the souls of men to hell and to the grave. Oh man, don't rise. And let that great machine march on without you. Let it grind the bones of the poor without your pushing it along. Oh man, is it not worth your life to be free from the blood of these? Don't rise, oh man, don't rise. Sharper eyes. It is not what you think. You count the miles and tally the receipts, but you do not see the measure of what they say you'll be. And when you think yourself behind, you look to books and study faces, and all of your glory is no more than the reflection of the fallen, and the pot stirs round a witch's brew of boiling vomit, and in each man's eyes the ghastly countenance of the lost, the skin a ghostly pallor, each a demon set to devour his neighbor. But to yourselves you're not that bad, and the eagles look down upon you from high above, and perceive with sharper eyes the earth-bound hosts, grubbing about in the dirt, digging and tilling it up in search of silver. And they turn their eyes away in shame and fly away to the mountains where they mourn the loss of His supreme creation. And all the while you fret your bottom line and fear the day when it all collapses. Yes, it is not what you think. The last Exodus. The time has come for each person to traverse their own wilderness path, and through that experience to create their own sacred remembrances, and thus keep alive the truth of, not of what God did for a people far distant and far removed by time and culture, but of what He did for each of us. And just as the children of Israel observed the Passover, we too will remember from moment to moment how God spared us, while thousands around us were slain, because they would not suffer themselves to be led out of what they thought they were. And this is the last great Exodus that Jeremiah was talking about when he said, "Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that it shall no more be said, The Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither He had driven them. And I will bring them again into their land, that I have given unto their fathers." Jeremiah 16:14-15. And this last Exodus will change the hearts of the people. It will bring them to have hearts of flesh and not hearts of stone, because it is not only a journey into a geographical place, but a journey into the very heart of God. The completeness doctrine. There are many whose faith relies upon a completeness doctrine. They believe that the truth may be found the way a shiny pebble may be found, and captured and carried away in one's pocket. They see the acquisition of truth as an event and not a process. And so once they believe that it has been secured and bound up within the creed, they relax into the knowledge that it is theirs to keep and theirs alone. But they do not realize that such truth never comes alone. It is always accompanied by falsehood. There are wolves among the sheep, and ignorant among the best of us, so that no framework is without its flaws. And it is our job to look within and seek help from the divine, to weed out all that is not true, not for the sake of setting others right, but so that we may see the truth more clearly for ourselves. But know that when you do, there will be those who will renounce you as a heretic, and all because you cannot swallow the completeness doctrine. They want you to be all in or nothing. But for those of us who want the truth at all costs, that is not enough. Where are you from? Where are you from? I'm going to start this one again. Where are you from? It's hard to say, he said. Here and there, everywhere. Is that okay? Well, yes, but it's unusual. I guess, he said. But that is how it is. It's who I am, unfettered, except perhaps to the thing that you avoid. It is that one thing that compels me to be so many things, principally the one you need, just here, just now. Is that okay? Well, yes, but I don't know how to place you. Does it matter? He asked. Well, no, but if you're unfettered, how will I know your customs, How will I make your sign?" "You won't," he said. "You are not prepared to be so many things, and it is enough today to try to be that thing that is needed just here, just now. And what I need from you is nothing, the thing that you avoid. Can you leave the thing you, can you leave the thing you are in favor of the something more, in favor of another's customs, in favor of a foreign sign? If so, then there's a chance that one day you will join my people and learn our customs, share our signs. But I warn you, there are those who will not have it, for they cannot stand to have the thing that they avoid paraded in front of them. And when they've cast you out for not being wholly theirs, then you'll be prepared to join the host of them who bear no emblem but truth itself, that truth that sees the beauty in the customs they despise. And then you'll fully be what's needed, just here, just now. The Valley of Ruin. Ruin is a gift. Within the context of ruin, one can reassess and recalibrate. But the unrepentant will not do that, and I cannot help them here. I do not speak to them. But for those who've always known that something wasn't quite right with all of their self-made glory, ruin opens the portals to transcendence. It breaks down in preparation for that which God will build up. It kills and strips to the bare bone in preparation for a more glorious resurrection, when sinews and flesh will come up upon them, and we will live and not die. But the path to such things does not lead down roads of glory. It leads through the valley of dry bones, through the valley of ruin. The coming generation. There is a generation coming that will forsake this modern culture in its entirety, and the culture will forsake them as well. They will be the new dissenters, the peaceful rebels, traitors to all that man has aspired to be, and they will rejoice to do without, and they will put their whole trust in the great unseen, for they will have no other choice, and he will be to them all that the culture promised to be, but unlike the culture, he will deliver. Each in his own tongue. Today you are bound by a law, the imperfect law of the group, and that is fine for those who serve the whole, for the sake of holding things together. But know that the truth you keep is tainted by such a motive. You must learn to serve the highest one, who cannot be bound by groups of fearful, tainted souls. And if you do enlist to serve the one who groupless is, do not be surprised when you are stripped of a people. Do not be surprised to find yourself alone for a time. It is the way of all those who cling to the truth for truth's sake, and to no other. And it is a lonely road, fraught with what appears to be endless difficulties. But eventually, if you do not forsake your guide, you will arrive to an innumerable company of friends, each their own, that is, and his. And together, a motley crew, you'll worship, each in his own tongue, the One. The end of the world. Listen, and this is just for my friends, the strange sort who have fallen out. Don't think you'll save it. You can't. And for heaven's sake, don't believe that they can save it. They say they can, but they get paid to pretend it's so, but they can't. Just accept that it is over. You'll feel much better when you do, and don't feel so bad. It wasn't yours to save. The Falling Leaves of Promise. I wrote this while working as a transport driver for a funeral home. We were located in a county with a large population of indigent and transient people. My job was to go out into the desert and bring back those who had died in their cars or vans or camper trailers. Most would say it was gruesome work, and it was, but I loved it. It felt more like a calling than a job, and that was a common sentiment in the industry. I remember going into the chapel side of the funeral home when nobody was there. I would sit in the silence and soak in the sacredness of it. It was the same feeling I felt when I was taking care of someone who had died. I loved that part of it. But there were things I didn't like the politics and the increasingly corporate nature of the business. The owner was the son of a funeral director, but he was more entrepreneur than undertaker, and he treated it like a business. Several years earlier, he had bought his father out and proceeded to expand the business. He bought funeral home after funeral home. He centralized, he consolidated. He turned it all into a finely tuned machine. Well, kind of. Sometimes it seemed that he was buying mortuaries faster than he could run them. But he didn't seem to care. His eyes were on some distant goal that kept moving further and further away as he approached it. And mortuaries were not all that he owned. He bought sandwich shops and strip malls. He expanded. And as he did, he streamlined everything toward the goal of profitability. Luckily for me, my little branch was not profitable, or if so, the margins were slim. And on top of that, we were 90 miles from the home office, and our county had strange laws and rules that made it so that we had to do things differently than the rest of his mortuaries. This meant that I was left alone for the most part, which suited me perfectly. I did all of the transports, I pushed paper around in the office, and now and then I even met with families, a duty which was usually reserved for the funeral director who worked 40 miles away. And since I was on my own, I didn't really notice the corporatization of our industry as much as those who were closer to the home office. Traditionally, undertaking was a family business, but things were changing. Several years before, the other funeral home in our small town had been purchased by a large corporation that was quickly gobbling up the independents. The last I knew, there were about 2,800 mortuaries in the network. And despite our owner's ambitious inclinations, we were very small apples in comparison. But things were about to change. There were rumblings among the employees, and upper management was acting funny. They stopped having me come into the office, and they started letting things go. The sign blew down, and they didn't fix it. Somebody vandalized the front of the funeral home, and they did nothing. And they transferred the woman who had babied my little branch along to a different department and put me under a transport supervisor 90 miles away. Almost overnight, my little branch stopped feeling like a funeral home and started feeling like a place to process dead bodies. Ship them in and ship them out, and do so with as little cost to the company as possible. It was disturbing, but still I felt called to stay. Until a few months later, I came to work one day to discover that we had been acquired by a larger corporation. Instead of 10, we were now 200 funeral homes strong. And then it all started to make sense. It was actually I was actually relieved, since the previous owner had obviously checked out early, and my hopes rose upon the winds of change. Unfortunately, I quickly discovered that the new owners were just a larger version of the old regime. Like the corporation that owned the other mortuary in town, they were gobbling up new assets as fast as they could, with little regard for the individual problems of the entities they acquired. Everything was streamlined for profitability, and the sacredness that had pervaded the profession was sanitized by policy and blind protocol. The old sentiment of "from our family to yours" was gone, and it was sad to watch it disappear and be replaced with cold, unfeeling numbers. At least the old owner had been raised in the business. He and his father had once been undertakers, trusted servants of a community that they served, and a portion of that remained even as he shifted his focus to other things. But now it was gone. The difference was so stark that many employees moved on, leaving those who stayed with double the workload as the new management scrambled to find new people. One woman who left, a funeral director of 20 years, said that she was checking out of the business and out of the rat race altogether. It had all become too corporate. She was going to get a little camper, park it in a friend's yard, and take a part-time job so she could do the things she loved the most: paddleboard on the lake and spend time with her daughter. I wrote this poem as I thought of her and others like her. By this time I had also given notice. I finally felt as if I had been released from the calling, and I wondered what the company would do. It's not easy to find people willing to get up at all hours of the night to take care of dead people, and the scarcity of help seemed to be ubiquitous. Everywhere I looked, companies were short-handed. People were working less, checking out, moving on, going home, and giving up on the rat race. And something felt strangely right about it. It will leave chaos in its wake, I thought, and perhaps that's exactly what we need. One day, very near the end, I came to work to discover that our landlord had walled up the entry to the chapel from the office side of the funeral home. It was an accident, actually, a miscommunication from one of the lawyers of the old owner. But I wasn't surprised. So many important details were falling through the cracks, and as I stood there, looking at the wall that blocked the entrance to the chapel, it seemed ironically fitting. The sacred thing had been severed, and I knew that it was only time before it all began to come apart at the seams, not just for the funeral industry, but for every enterprise that had forsaken the sacred thing in favor of nameless goals that served the bottom line. They are moving out, one by one, from the system that promised so much, and now cannot deliver the pleasure that it promised. And as they do, they leave chaos in their wake, precious chaos, like the heat that beats down upon a smoldering mass of leaves. I always loved the fall, so silent, so pure, so reminiscent of a thing I couldn't place except in the memory of other cool and dying days, and in the precious recollection of childhood feasts of love, of family, and of all that exists when work is put away, and we remember what we're working for. And perhaps that's what they are doing, going home to the reason, forsaking the scream of getting more, and choosing family over the press and pressure. If so, then I look forward to the dark and fertile soil with which God will plant his garden in the spring that follows his long winter. Burning. Did you know that it is coming to an end? The good, the bad, it is coming to an end. And it will all be consumed in fire. All of your plans, your devices, in beautiful, resplendent flames. In preference to the thing you thought you wanted, but believed you couldn't have. And if you can let it all go, you may have it, but you must let it go, that is. Otherwise you'll burn hot with the memory and prefer the burning to deliverance. Letting go of earthly pleasure. They blindly imbibe in earthly pleasure, but that won't work for long, because all earthly bliss that does not end in heavenly bonds, because all earthly bliss that does not unite us in heavenly bonds will end. And the end is close at hand, and the day will come when you will need the help of unseen helpers. For that reason, the best strategy is to forego momentary pleasure, to forestall the impulse toward the profane, and wait upon deliverance unto the sublime. And if you can't, to seek the help of God. But the prophets and the sages have been saying that for a long time, and perhaps we now must reap what we have sown. Surely the time has come, and the message has gone forth, and the end is at hand, and perhaps in that some, if not many, will be redeemed through suffering. But how black the night that comes you do not know. For the world will be wrapped in what will appear to be endless night. So that in comparison, all that which you believed to be evil will shrink increasingly to ever paler shades of gray. And some will run headlong into all that they feared with a will, and with loathing of the light, and others will turn with yearning hearts toward the unseen place of glory. And when the darkness has had its way and the world with all its pomp has descended into the pit, then with key in hand, the Mighty One will come and seal all those who do not love the light unto the thing that they desire. I shudder to think of it. But there is hope for them who have not yet killed the truth within, and may heaven shed its mercy upon them, in whom still lives the love of light, and deliver them from darkness, one step at a time. For there, just on the other side of that great night to end all nights, shines the brightness of a world reborn, and you do not know how bright it shines. Its pillars rise heavenward and glisten in the light of everlasting truth. And for all those who can forego the delights of earthly pleasure, or at least begin the journey toward the holy place, there awaits unseen helping hands, ready to lift them up and point the way. And the time is now. The clock has already told the hour, and the only thing left to do is to turn the refiner's fire up and discover who is who. Two things. Thank God that you are two things. If not, you would be one, and that not his. But the day is coming when you will have to choose, everlastingly, everlastingly. And then you will be one, and not two, O God. And if one, then whose? Not yours, but his or his. And better to be two than one, when the thing you are is not the thing it is. But better still to forsake the phony one for the one that truly is, for you cannot be two forever. The last great age. There was the Stone Age, and then the Iron Age. After that came the Middle Ages, and then the Industrial Age, and the Information Age. And some claim that the next great age is the Augmented Age, the age when AI will tie us all together with augmented faculties. It is a man-made utopian ideal, to which many of the brightest minds are bending their wits at present. But the augmented age will fail. It is too complex for man to handle. It is a leaning Tower of Babel, and when it falls, confusion will follow in its wake, and from the ashes will then rise the last great age of man, the age of gifts. And for those with eyes to see, the seeds of this last great age are being planted even now in the hearts of those who choose to live by the gifts of God and man. It is the only utopia there ever was or ever will be. The Lady of the Wood. When I wrote this poem, I didn't publish it right away. It was too strange, too edgy, and I was not sure I knew what it meant completely. If I did, I couldn't describe it, and so I put it away. 6 months or a year later, I found it as I was sorting through old files, and I published it to my blog in a moment of rash abandon. A good friend read it and responded with a raised eyebrow. I couldn't blame him. It was a strange poem. And here it is for you to read and raise an eyebrow, or not. She stands on the edge of the sacred wood, at the end of the trail where the lumberman stood, when he felled the last of the sacred trees, and then fell down dead of an April breeze. And when he died, she looked upon him with dispassion. Do you fear the Lady of the Wood? You should. Did you know that she awaits your ruin, and does not fear your deepest displeasure? To her it is the sweetest song. It is the music that turns round the clock, that unwinds itself, and soon will stop. And on that day the lights will go out upon the town, and the hosts of the forest will come down and claim the thing that was lost. And what will you do then, when there are no more towers left to topple? Better to make friends of the forest folk while there's still time. But I warn you, to step into the sacred wood is to relinquish the thing you most fear losing. It is for that reason that few ever go there, except to try to take it down. But in that they are disillusioned. For how can one hope to destroy the magic of the wood that lies beyond perception? In the end, it is only their connection to the sacred that is lost, and the hallowed forest remains untouched, safely guarded. It is reserved for the believers in such things, and she is the queen of the mystic realm, and it is her that will lead the spirits into battle, not to conquer, but to watch them die of an April breeze, and not to flinch as the unbelieving host sever the final string to that which they believed they worshipped. Get out before it's too late. The world is polarizing. People scamper to join the right side, but they do not yet realize that the only ones who will not be destroyed in this last battle are those who opt out of the conflict altogether and choose a kingdom that is not of this world. And that's what this poem's about. Get out before it's too late. The fight is only beginning. Get out before it's too late, or you will lose. All will lose. Get out before it's too late. You don't know what you are facing, for if you hurl yourself into this kettle, you'll discover when it boils that all who fight in this last battle die like lobsters in the pot. End of Part 1, or Chapter 1. Part 2, or Chapter 2. Into the Unseen. The Rise of Silence. Introduction to this poem. Loud voices, powerful players, and dark collusion can change the tide of human affairs. And the everyday man or woman may feel helpless to do anything about it, but we are not helpless. Silence is on our side. And here's the poem. They believe that we are no threat, and they are right. Yet little do they know the power of silence, though immersed and surrounded by it. They rarely notice and certainly never give ear, for there is too much to say, too much to do, too little time. They are too busy doing good to hear, while all the while silence grows with deafening stealth, until silence only knows. But those who listen hear and wait, for the end we all suppose, the end when noise has worn itself out, when words have had their say, when scheming, toiling, and anguish cease, when all that's left is deathly silence. That will be the day when silent hearts are still, and noise is done away. And then break forth eternal day, when silence speaks, and earth bursts forth in radiant life, the fruit of silent, suffering souls, thrice proven through woeful noise. And then crying, weeping, covering ears, the chattering horde will hide in rocks and hills and corn whiskey stills, with the one thing they can't abide. For hide as they will, the silence still will find them there, and chase them, God only knows where, till silence reigns from plain to plain, and peace be our reward for bearing the grief of their unbelief in silence. Yes, they believe that we are no threat, and they are right. What we wanted all along. There are times when I wonder who I am, what I am. Do you? The Ojibwe call God the great mystery, and He is, and so are we, especially if He's done a work in us. And it becomes hard to tell where our faults end and He begins. And isn't that a mystery? I would have expected to find Him in my strength and in all the things I long to be for Him, but He was not there. Instead, I found Him in the weakness that I try to avoid. And I wonder, is this the thing that He was after? I am convinced more and more that it is. And isn't that mysterious? Surely. And it makes me wonder what great mysteries await the world when the towers fall, and we discover that at the end of all our strength is weakness. Perhaps, though we didn't realize it, that is what we wanted all along. The end is the beginning. Have you ever felt called to spend your means in an endeavor that appears to have no hope of working out? I have, over and over, and I have seen miracles. After a while you find yourself rejoicing even before the miracle appears. So that was the introduction. And the poem. I crossed a finish line today, the end of all that I can do. I have obeyed. I have done everything He asked. I have spent my last means down to the last few dollars, and now it is in His hands. And though I have not yet seen with my physical eyes the miracle, it does not diminish my joy in His deliverance. For my end, I know, is only the beginning. There were no books in the beginning. There were no books in the beginning, and He stood upon the hilltop garden from which flowed all life, all truth. And the life-giving waters flowed forth to water the four corners of the earth. And did not God say that it was good? And I believe that he was right. And so that is where I am going, back to the garden. I am done with facts and formulas. I am done with calculations. I will drink from the stream that flows from God himself. For I am not wise enough to interpret. I am not keen enough to see. I am lost, and not even your brightest minds or earth's brightest souls can save me. You say that you will translate it all again, and that this time you will get it right, and that once you do, we will find him within its pages. And the books pile high, but they will not reach heaven, though you build a tower past the clouds. Where books fall short. Only the lesser part of truth can be bound up in a book. The greater part must be revealed by the Holy Spirit. It is the sealed portion promised to all those who have faith, like the ancients. The King of Unseen Things. I don't believe the things I see with my eyes. The eyes deceive, for they do not show those truths that yet will be. Instead, I trust in the bright hope of unseen things. And as the world descends into darkness, I will keep my eyes fixed upon the truth that lies beyond. In this there is hope, so that, though my body be crushed by the weight of deceitful appearances, I will yet rise to meet the King of Unseen Things. Home. I am not at home here. I keep thinking that I will turn the corner and find it in someone, something, someplace. But my people are not of this world, and so I keep moving, searching, now and then thinking that I have found my place, my people. But inevitably I discover that there are places they cannot go, and each of them settles down into their own. But I move on. And two can't walk together when one is called to stay and another called to wander. And so we part, they to their congregation, and I to my solitude. And to the world I am alone. God alone knows that I am not. The trackless path. The path to the divine is not an earthbound path. You cannot follow another, nor can another follow you. It is more like the path of birds. It begins with a leap of faith and progresses by faith. And it is through gratitude that you transcend all obstacles. God's paradise. I don't know why people content themselves with this world when there is a better waiting. And I don't know why they wait for heaven when heaven waits for them the day long. Was not this earth God's paradise? And might it not be so again if only we believe? We will not miss a beat. Introduction. Modern technology points us to the world of faith. It is a world much like God's world of miracles. In fact, it has been called miraculous. But it can be easy to forget that it is only a road sign, a mercy, to point our imaginations to the thing that He intends to do when we put away our unbelief. One thing for sure, we cannot find it by looking back. and especially not by fearfully hoarding earthly things out of a belief that we must store up against the day when it all falls apart. That was never his injuncture. And now the poem. We thought that we could find it by looking back, but we cannot. It lies in the future, and we will never turn around. We will never look back. We'll keep on moving forward with our eyes upon the thing that's coming, even as the world comes to a screeching halt, because they cannot imagine any future not of their own making. And some will attempt to bunker down and retreat into the past, but they will find that they cannot, for there is no amount of hoarding that can prepare them for what's coming. But for those who choose the future, this is only the beginning. And if the world has been free with its substance unto carnal pleasure, we will be more free with our substance unto the acquisition of friends in heavenly places. And faith and everything we ever needed flowing out from the unseen cache of God's limitless storehouse. And as for technology, we embrace it, wherein it serves to point us to the light. And when the towers fall and the world is weeping for their loss, we'll erect new ones, made of faith, so that upon Mount Zion we will not miss a beat. A new world. When the glory of this world is fully revealed, it will pass away, and as it does, a new and higher world will come. Palm trees. Written on a day when I was on the road and on the edge of faith, having spent the last of my money on a hotel. This is the introduction, by the way. Having spent the last of my money on a hotel, a strange and extravagant spend for someone in my position, and also needful, but also needful. And I sat at the edge of the hotel pool looking up at the palm trees swaying in the wind. And here's the poem. Palm trees sway with the wind, and somewhere I cannot perceive except with other eyes that see what eyes don't see, there stares a something, someone, down on me. The last rays of pre-dusk sunlight catch the green palm boughs and glisten. And just there, not in the boughs or in the light or in the tree, but in all three at once, and something more in me, I see that place. It gazes down on me. For now we wait, the watcher and the seen, until the day when the seen will also see as he is seen. The river. This is the introduction. Written just days before another journey. Called to the road once again with no idea where it would lead. And feeling grateful for the old river that carries me along. Grateful for the spirit that shapes my soul and gives me life. And for the thing that I become by changing with his changes and letting him carry me deep into the valley, out into the sea of his perfect intent for me. I ride upon your current. Where? I do not know. But I drift along with sky above and you beneath, and without a thought, old river, you carry me away, deep into the valley, out into the sea. You drown me in the tide of the thing I'm meant to be. You are wiser than the mountains, old river, and taller than the trees. For it's you that keeps on moving, ever changeless in your changes, and always being, shaping, giving life to everything you see. Give me life, old river. Give me peace, peace in knowing that you know where we are going. Peace in knowing that I, though but a speck upon your current, am ever more becoming, ever changing in your changes, ever more a tumbling current, ever endlessly with thee. Tenuous. I love that my life is tenuous. There is a comfort, a peace in not knowing, but it is different than the world's peace. The world finds peace in things remaining the same. I find peace in the winds that blow from the unseen place and carry me this way and that. The world finds peace in the false belief that it can preserve its life. I find peace in the fact that I've already died, and that I no longer care to preserve my life, but trust that it is preserved to spite, and perhaps because of my sacred wanderings. My peace is like a river, always moving, always winding, never knowing when it may drop like Niagara Falls, or empty out into the ocean and cease to be a river at all, but be absorbed into the great unfathomable beyond. And I wonder if I make the world feel nervous. They do not like the thing that I've become. For that reason I do not stay in one place too long. I am a squatter in the world, and the world permits me to be so long as I keep moving on, moving on. And so far I have not made enough of a ruckus for the world to cast me out into that eternal place. And I'm glad for that, because I love the world, and I have a thing to say before I go. And so, until then, my life is tenuous. Thank God. I wouldn't have it any other way. Coming in the cloud. It lies beyond all that you can see, just there where the darkness disappears into the unknown pitch. That is the place we seek. It is the place we strain to hear, and we serve an unseen king who speaks in whispers out of the abyss, and we obey. Come hell, or come what may, and that unseen kingdom comes. It unfurls its intent in the willing movement of our limbs. Oh, to serve it with our members, to walk in step to the unheard drum, to move into the fray with light and truth our covering, and faith unshaken our shield, to live or die in the service of this last and final King unseen. Unseen for now, but those with eyes to see behold him already, coming in the cloud. The last frontier. Sometimes faith is going about your business when all hell threatens to destroy. It's the kind of trust that knows and doesn't need reassurance. And the truth travels with you in everything you do. And every act, however menial, becomes a prayer, because you could be doubtfully pleading for a thing you don't believe. I wonder if this kind of faith is the last frontier. I wonder if it is the final state of those who have traversed the trackless path, that in the end they rest in sacred knowing, and all of their prayers are prayers of gratitude, and the truth and the truth of that which is, the truth of that which was, and the truth of that which yet will be. The Sabbath of the earth. When we do not work at earthly things, the things of every day of the week come together into one. And this is the Sabbath of the earth, when our worship and our rest mingle with the things we do for labor. And godly labor claims the day of rest. And though there be but few who now enlist, know that this work, this rest, will fill the earth, until the houses of worship go vacant, and the sacred silence of abandoned things will claim them for the owls, and for the things that creep and crawl in the night. For we will worship at the grinding wheel, and we will labor in the service of the souls of men in such a myriad of ways that we will not be able to tell the difference between the religious and the secular. For so it is with all those who serve the sacred wind that blows where it pleases. They cannot tell from whence it came or where it goes, and eventually they lose track of the days of the week. They abandon their calendars and forget to count the years. And when they do, they grow both old and young, and time for them is done away, and all things are made new. His hiding place. I believe that I have found the pavilion that covereth his hiding place. Or at least I have found a few of the principles that define that place. Not surprisingly, it lies on the outskirts of the culture. Surprisingly, it moves and you must move with it. But it is real. I have felt the shade of its sheltering canopy, and I have also felt that shade move in an instant, and known that it was time to move on. Unto the impossible. Have you ever known a thing that only you knew? A truth that lived within your bosom and nowhere else? It was a personal truth, a thing that you needed to know, a promise that kept you moving forward toward an unseen holy goal. Did you know that such truths can die of neglect, especially when it's known to only you? For it is more like a seedling than a cinder block. It must be watered and fed by your belief, by your continued repetition, and by right action. And if you nourish the seed, one day it will bloom for all to see. It will manifest itself not only in your heart, but in miraculous deliverance unto the impossible. A message to the weak. Our work is faith. So don't be disheartened when all that you can do is not enough. The answer lies not in your own capacity to think, to act, to be enough, but in the unseen portals of divine providence. So let all you do be done, not with the thought that you will move the mountain, but as a token of belief, and say, I act today in this small way because I trust that these actions, small and few, are the earnest for unseen rivers of divine deliverance. Power and freedom. You want to change the world, and you believe that you can do so through a change in policy, but you are mistaken. Your doctrine is something like, if only those in power could use their power to profit me and those I love, then we would be free. But such thoughts reveal a misunderstanding of both power and freedom. Power resides in the ability to suffer well, and freedom is its consequence. The man who complains because he's denied his rights has lost his rights already. The man who knows his rights quietly lives by them. He does not complain when the powers that be don't acknowledge his work, nor does he use their rejection or disregard as an excuse to not show up for work. For he does not work for them, and if in the end his labors buy him no more than a seat in the gas chambers, he dies a free man. The real work. The real work happens in the field of your consciousness, so that the things you do and the things that come to you are an outward manifestation of an inward work. Excuse me. In spirit and in truth. In spirit and in truth, that seems to be the message of the age. It is finally time to look past the outward to the inward thing that binds, to forget the thing we thought we knew, and to grow bright in the love of all that warms us. And it is a comfort to me to know that I can't convince you. The convincing time is past. Though perhaps when the heavens roar and the tempest heaves the sea, perhaps, but only that. Until then, it is for the few with eyes low enough to see that all their claims are emptiness, unless they worship him in spirit and in truth. Returning to not knowing. I am so tired of trying to figure things out. I have stared into the heavens wide-eyed until my eyes have nearly burned out of their sockets, and it is more than my mortal mind can comprehend. I surrender to not knowing. How sweet to return to simple obedience, to move forward acknowledging that I don't have all the answers, but listening intently for the whispers of him who does. A New Hope. Introduction. Have you ever heard the sacred voice that whispers a promise that was only to you? I have. And I have sought to faithfully water my belief in those promises, trusting that they will come despite the things I see. Well, one day I heard the sacred voice say that all those things would not come until I died, and that I might not have long to live. And I believed. And that very day I made two very important choices, the kind of choices you make when you know you don't have long to live, and realize that you must buckle down and get serious about what your life is about. And as soon as I made those choices, within the very hour, I heard the sacred voice whisper that perhaps death was not the only way, and I wrote this poem a few days later. In the end, none of us know how long we have, nor how or when God will fulfill his promises to us. All we can do is believe that sooner or later all that he has said will come to pass, and work while the day lasts. And now for the poem. I lay down my life, but what does that what does that mean? I don't know. Or perhaps I do. That I let go of all that I had hoped again, which is all that he has promised. At least my hope of receiving it in this world. And in that, he says, there is hope, that it will surely come when I am gone. What a surprise. And I feel it in my chest, the promise that I haven't long. And so I baby this old frame. I treat it gently, with the hope that I can get it all down before I go. Work, 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 writing down the words that are etched upon this flesh. And I hear the sound ring out from the unseen place. I hear the call of him whom I serve. Work, work, he says. Waste out what's left of your life, and let me be the thing that you desire. A 1,000 years of peace. For those who beat their swords into plowshares, there is no need for Christ to appear in the sky. He has already appeared within their heart. Their 1,000 years of peace have already begun. The time when what is. Introduction. Contemplating outward rituals and the thing to which they point. The poem. The time has come when what is, and you can no longer sanctify it by your ceremony, nor can you desecrate it by coveting your own supposed power. For that which was once bestowed on man shrivels in the bright light of his dawning, and divine knowledge will finally give meaning to all the symbols that approached the real, so that we will partake in the thing itself, or die clinging to the shadow that preceded it. A nation coming. In the coming years, understanding will blossom, while the world of the self-righteous is steeped in war. And that war will end all wars, though I can't really call it war. Mere killing is more accurate. And the world will devolve into chaos, and men will kill each other in one wave of carnage followed by another. And at the same time will rise the banner of a new nation, which is not of this world. Its citizens will not take up the sword, but will sue for peace. They will put away their differences and love one another. And eventually, when the wicked have killed the wicked, and there is no soul left who can be convinced of any cause for which they will take a life, the world will be at peace. End of Part 2, or Chapter 2. Part 3, or Chapter 3. Tools for the Road. None good. If we aim to be good, we are doomed to fail. There are none good, remember? But if we aim to do the right thing, just here, just now, and to slay that part of ourselves that wants to be good, or to appear good to ourselves, then there is a chance of being true. Better to be true than to appear good to ourselves. For then we are false. Then our case is hopeless. For we have deceived the one person who can lead us out of falsehood. The path of peace. I asked God to protect me from evil and darkness, and I thought that meant that He would give me peace. What I did not realize was that my plea for peace was really a prayer to make things easy. I didn't know that the path of peace, the path that leads out of evil and darkness, is narrow, with dangers on every side, and that the thing to avoid was not pain, but complacency. For the real danger lies in the fact that we are at peace with evil. We are at home in the dark, and we call it simply living. And until He makes us weak, until the very appearance of inward evil causes us pain, we are in danger. Consensus. I no longer look for consensus. I look to God. I do what I feel is right. I obey the voice that rings out from heaven, and there is peace in it, because I have left off trying to bend myself in half for the sake of aligning with those who cannot see what I see. I seek to align myself with one, and though I be alone in it, I am alone with Him, and that is enough. The twist ending. The twist ending. Your life is not what you think, thank God. And you have less power to change your fate than you might suppose. But that doesn't mean that it is nothing. Kindness is never wasted, and love, though it be measured out by imperfect hands into undeserving vessels, is still love. And after all that, who knows what faith can do? Because faith in God is more than you. And that is the thing that interests me. We are players on a stage. Our lines are written down. But to believe that an unseen hand can change it all is the twist ending. When you know a thing is right. When you know a thing is right, not by earthbound means, but from above, move forward. Take a step, and then another. Move slowly if you must, but keep moving. And if you do, the fire of the promise will shine upon your path and open up the way before you. You will experience clarity and reassurance, and further light will come. Personal Scripture. Scripture is the Word of God, and God speaks to those who listen. Few listen, but those who do have heard no less than Scripture. They have heard the very Word of God, and that Word is no less binding upon them than what we have canonized as Scripture, perhaps more binding, for it is God's very Word to them. It is personal, and it is incumbent upon them to heed and to obey. And if they obey God's Word to them, if they treasure their personal Scripture more than all the world, if they treasure their personal Scripture more than all the world, then God will speak again, and again, and again, and again. And His Word will spring up inside them, a spring of living water welling up to eternal life. Listen and obey. Can you hear the voice that whispers out of the great beyond? And are you one who, when they hear, believes and follows? And are you willing to sacrifice your worldly things for the sake of an unseen, felt reality? If so, then you will be taught of God and angels as you listen and obey. Don't look back. Keep your eyes forward. Don't look back. Let the dead past bury the past. And love. Love will resurrect all that which truly was yours to begin with. A new job. Where are you? Are you riding high on life, or are you low? Do you stand upon the factory floor, loathing your place in life and wondering, is this all I'm good for? If so, then there is a better job for you. Leave your present employer today and begin work immediately for the King of unseen things. And when you show up on the factory floor tomorrow, choose to be grateful. It's hell, I know. It is so much harder than just showing up. But it is the only way to brighter tomorrows. And the only pay you'll receive is to know that you are good for something more. For surely someone will feel it. And though they'll never know that it was you, they will look upward and wonder if it was God. Purposeful imagination. Religion contains certain performances, things people do in order to focus the mind in a certain direction. For example, the Lord's Supper. It is intended to cause the initiate to imagine that they are actually partaking of Christ Himself, ingesting Him and thus becoming Him, by continued partaking and remembrance. If this is done intentionally, it is an exercise of the mind. It is a purposeful imagination. And purposeful imagination has the power to transform. The biggest struggle with such performances is that they only happen but once per week or month, or worse, only once per year, or once per lifetime. Better to weave such purposeful imagination into the fabric of every day. Let every morsel be the blood and body. Let every step be a renewal of our faith. And thus perhaps through constant remembrance be transformed by constant purposeful imaginations into the very thing He desires us to be. Look up. Are you at peace right now? If not, take a moment to meditate, to relax completely. And then look up from the plane of the earth to the clouds above the horizon. Now imagine better things, just there, just a little higher than the earth. It's not so far from us. In this way you will join the work that will raise the earth to a higher plane, but only if the thing you see when you imagine is in keeping with His intent. Otherwise your light just might be darkness. If so, how great is that darkness? Finding God's pain. People make choices to avoid pain. Some avoid immediate pain through pleasure-seeking and mind-numbing choices. Others make choices to avoid future pain by being responsible and looking out for their future selves. But if we choose to follow God into the trackless path, we will discover that inevitably He will lead us to embrace not only the sweet, but the bitter. And it is only in this way that we can be freed from our aversion to pain. Only then can we come to be pained by that which causes God pain. Faith comes first. Faith must come first, so put it at the forefront, since results spring out of belief. It's a matter of priority, and faith is nurtured in the dark brown fertile beds of peace and gratitude and trust. So you have to relax into it. It's like a meditation, and it takes time. Not to say that it takes a long time, but that you must allot time for it before you start to work, so that when you begin to work, you do so peacefully, fully knowing that the work has already been accomplished and that your temporal labors are no more than tokens of a much larger set of unseen movements that have been set in motion through faith to bring the work about. Like birds. We are like birds flying heavenward, and gratitude is the wind beneath our wings. An abundance of choices. Sometimes it's the abundance of choices that's the problem. We stress out over making the right choice. We try to choose the perfect way. But perhaps that's a mistake, since the heart thing is the way. The intent is the thing that matters. And if the heart is right, then the choice, if the heart is right and the choice is wrong, that'll sort itself out. It will self-correct with time and experience. And the idea that we must get it right before we start only keeps us from starting. The crops of yesterday. I reap today the results of thoughts sown in the field of my consciousness, days or weeks or months or even years ago. There is little that can be done to stem the tide of such harvests once they have taken root and been allowed to grow through repetition and neglect in the unseen field of the things that I secretly believe. To tear them up once they manifest themselves in outward things is tantamount to an attempt to turn back nature. So instead, I will accept the bitter harvest sown in my ignorant youth, and sow better and more deliberate thoughts into the field of my consciousness today, so that they may grow up unseen and manifest themselves through passage of time in better tomorrows. Just our evil. The world's on fire. It's burning high into the night. And that's okay. It always has been that way, somewhere. And while it grew into a hideous, gruesome sight, and men's souls were weighed in the balance and found wanting, and they lost themselves in passion, at the same time, somewhere, there slept the infant in the cradle, and the mother picked away at her needlework beside the fireplace, and the papa loaded wood into the box beside the fire, and there was perfect peace somewhere, and all because they minded just their business and dared to choose peace and to believe that what evil fell beneath their own eye was just their evil, and didn't seek some evil far away. But nowadays they import evil and rouse themselves to foreign passions 10, 50, 100,000 miles away. And the baby screams for want of mother, while papa and mama browse for other evils, and miss just the evil that they might have only thwarted, the one beneath their noses, the evil of their very own today. Hesitation. Hesitate, and the world weeps. Old things. I cannot shed old things by looking back at dark mistakes, and yet they tug at my coat and beg to be understood, as if I could figure them out, but I can't figure them out. They make no sense, and when I try, dark clouds gather, and if I am not careful, they portend doom from which my mind must grapple to escape. And so I don't look back, I look forward to the bright light of all that He has promised. I step into the sunshine, and then into the sun, hot and scorching, and it burns away the old. But I do not notice, except in retrospect, that old things have fallen away. Flow. Water flows in one direction. If you desire means to flow into your bosom, let go. Surrender. Don't give up. Don't give in upon surrender. For we are not creatures who do it naturally, and it is the only way to freedom. Softening. Sometimes a monster is not what's needed, and sometimes we come at a problem with a knife when what we really need is a pillow, and sometimes the giants fall like a rock to the sound of silence. He speaks on. You believe that you can stop his mouth from speaking, but you can't. His words cannot be capped like a jar full of grasshoppers. Excuse me. His words cannot be capped like a jar full of grasshoppers. He speaks on. And if you are not listening, moving, stepping out upon the edge of faith, sooner or later the life which once you found in part will cease and die within your stony hearts. And then there is nothing left but to memorize and to recite and pretend you are alive when you are not. End of part 3 or chapter 3. This is about the author. Jonathan McCormick is a traveling poet and storyteller. He publishes a poem or story every day. If you would like to follow his work, you can do so here. Website, thetracklesspath.com. YouTube, @thetracklesspath. Podcast, The Trackless Path. Facebook, /Trackless Path. TikTok, @The Trackless Path. Amazon, https://www.amazon.com/stores/j-a-m-ccormick/authors/b09t6737S4. That's the end of the book. God bless you all.